Captain Hyunwoo stared at the massive alien ship through the bridge windows of his reconnaissance vessel. The ship was 3 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Its dark metal hull gleamed under the distant stars, and strange blue lights pulsed along its surface like a heartbeat. "Sir, they're sending us a message," said Lieutenant Min-soo from the communications station. His voice shook slightly. This was humanity's first contact with alien life, and everyone on the bridge knew they were making history. "Put it through," Hyunwoo ordered. He straightened his uniform and took a deep breath. Whatever happened next would change everything for Earth and all of humanity. The main screen flickered to life. A tall reptilian creature appeared before them. Its scales were dark green, and its yellow eyes seemed to glow in the dim light of its ship's bridge. The alien wore what looked like military armor covered in strange symbols. "I am Admiral Thexmal of the Varian Galactic Empire," the creature said. Its voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "You are humans from the 3rd planet of this system, correct?" Hyunwoo stepped forward. "Yes, I am Captain Hyunwoo of the Earth Defense Fleet. We come in peace and hope to establish friendly relations with your people." The alien's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile, but it was not a friendly smile. "Peace? How amusing. Your primitive species has no choice in this matter. I bring you the terms of your surrender." "Surrender?" Hyunwoo felt his heart sink. "We haven't done anything to you. We're explorers, not warriors. All inferior species must submit to the Empire," Thexmal continued as if Hyunwoo hadn't spoken. "You will integrate into our civilization as a protected class. Your people will work for the Empire's benefit. In return, we will provide you with food, shelter, and basic medical care." Commander So Young, the ship's xenobiologist, stepped beside Hyunwoo. She had spent years studying alien life and had dreamed of this moment, but not like this. "Admiral Thexmal, surely we can discuss this. Our species could benefit each other through trade and cultural exchange." The alien's eyes focused on her with cold interest. "You speak well for a primitive. Perhaps you would make a useful translator when your world surrenders. But there is nothing to discuss. The Empire has conquered 847 star systems. Your small world will be number 848. And if we refuse?" Hyunwoo asked, though he feared the answer. "Then we will take your world by force. Your people will serve the Empire either way. The choice is whether they serve as willing subjects or broken slaves." The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Everyone stared at the empty screen, trying to process what had just happened. "Sir," Min-soo said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships moving into our solar system. Big ones." Hyunwoo closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his face was hard with determination. "Get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command. Priority Alpha." The journey back to Earth took 18 hours. During that time, more Varian ships appeared throughout the solar system. They positioned themselves near Earth's asteroid mining stations and the small colonies on Mars and Europa. The message was clear. Humanity was surrounded. Admiral Taemin was waiting when Hyunwoo's ship docked at Luna Station. Taemin was a veteran of the colonial wars, where human settlements had fought each other over resources in the outer system. He was tough, smart, and had never lost a battle. But he had never faced anything like this. "Show me everything," Taemin said as soon as Hyunwoo and So Young entered the command center. They played the recording of their meeting with Admiral Thexmal. Taemin watched without speaking, his face growing darker with each word. When it finished, he stood quietly for a long moment. "How many ships?" he finally asked. 47 that we can detect," Hyunwoo replied. "But our sensors might not be picking up all of them. Their technology is clearly more advanced than ours. And they want us to surrender in 30 days. That's what they said." Taemin walked to the large window that looked out at Earth. The blue and green planet hung peacefully in space, unaware that its future was now in question. "Over my dead body." The next few days brought terrible news. The Varians attacked 3 mining stations in the asteroid belt without warning. The Ceres mining complex, home to 2,000 people, was completely destroyed. The stations at Vesta and Pallas suffered the same fate. In total, 847 humans died in the attacks. The message that followed was delivered by Admiral Thexmal himself. His reptilian face filled screens across Earth and all human colonies. "This was a demonstration of the Empire's power," he said. "Your primitive weapons cannot protect you. Your small ships cannot challenge our fleet. Submit now and no more of your people need to die. You have 25 days remaining. Dr. Jihai, Earth's top military strategist, worked day and night analyzing the attacks. She studied every piece of data from the destroyed stations, looking for any weakness in the alien ships. Their weapons use some kind of energy beam, she explained to the emergency council. It cuts through our hull plating like it's paper. Their ships also have shields that deflect our missiles and projectile weapons. What about nuclear weapons? Asked General Kyung-soo. We don't know. None of the mining stations had nuclear weapons to test against them. President Moon Jae looked around the table at Earth's military and scientific leaders. Options? We have 134 military ships, Taemin reported. Most are patrol boats and escort vessels. We have 8 heavy cruisers and 2 dreadnoughts. Against 47 alien warships with superior technology. He didn't need to finish. We also have about 3,000 civilian ships, added Captain Dong-hyun. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels. Most could be armed if we have time. Time we don't have, Jihai pointed out. They want an answer in 25 days. So Young had been quiet during the meeting, but now she spoke up. There might be another way. In my analysis of their first message, I noticed something interesting about their language patterns. What do you mean? The president asked. They keep calling us primitive. Not just our technology, but our entire civilization. I think they genuinely believe we're no threat to them. We're not, General Kyung-soo said bluntly. Maybe, So Young replied, but they're making assumptions about us based on other species they've conquered. What if those assumptions are wrong? Taemin leaned forward. Keep talking. Every species develops differently. They might have advanced energy weapons and faster-than-light travel. But what if they never developed certain technologies that we consider basic? Like what? So Young smiled grimly. Like nuclear weapons. They called us primitive for still using kinetic and chemical weapons. What if their definition of advanced warfare skipped over the technologies we specialized in? The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. Finally, President Moon Jae spoke. Admiral Taemin, prepare our fleets for battle. Dr. Jihai, I want every possible analysis of their weaknesses. Commander So Young, draft a response to their ultimatum. What should it say? So Young asked. Tell them that humanity respectfully declines their generous offer, the president said with steel in his voice, and that if they want Earth, they'll have to take it. Outside the window, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, unaware that its children were preparing for the fight of their lives. War Marshal Krekstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Void Render, and watched the small blue planet through the massive viewport. Earth looked so peaceful from this distance. Soon it would belong to the Empire, just like all the others. Status report, he commanded in the harsh Varian tongue. All ships of the 15th Conquest Fleet are in position, replied his aide, Sub-Commander Veleth. 847 vessels ready for planetary bombardment on your command. Krekstar nodded with satisfaction. The humans had rejected the Empire's generous offer of surrender. It was always the same with primitive species. They needed to see overwhelming force before they understood their place in the galaxy. He had conquered 23 worlds using the same strategy. First, destroy a few outlying settlements to show power. Then, when the primitives refused to surrender, bring the full fleet and crush their pathetic resistance in a few hours. The survivors were always much more cooperative after watching their military burn in space. Sir, Veloth continued, we're detecting movement in the human fleet. They appear to be grouping near their moon. How many ships? Our sensors count 134 military vessels and approximately 3,000 civilian craft. Krekstar's throat rumbled with amusement. 3,000? They're sending cargo ships against us? These humans are either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both, sir. It doesn't matter. Have all fleet commanders report readiness. We'll finish this quickly and move on to the next system. On Luna Station, Admiral Taemin watched the alien fleet through long-range telescopes. The Varian ships were arranged in perfect battle formation, their dark hulls blocking out entire sections of stars. He had fought in many battles during his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. Sir, Captain Dong-hyun reported from his position at the tactical station. All human ships are in position. We have the military vessels in the center formation, with the armed civilian ships forming the outer wings. Taemin nodded. It wasn't much of a battle plan, but it was all they had. The civilian ships had been hastily fitted with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. Mining lasers, construction charges, even some old chemical rockets from museums. None of it would do much against advanced alien shields, but it might buy time for the real military ships to engage. Dr. Ji-Hai hurried onto the bridge carrying a datapad. Her eyes were bright with excitement, which seemed strange given their desperate situation. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their weapons," she said quickly. "I think I found something important." "What is it?" "Their ships use bio-neural technology. The computer systems are partially organic, which makes them incredibly fast and efficient. But it also creates a weakness." Taman turned to face her fully. "What kind of weakness?" "Radiation. Specifically, the kind of radiation produced by nuclear fission. Bio-neural systems can't process those energy patterns. It would be like feeding poison to a brain." "You're saying nuclear weapons might work against them?" "I'm saying they might work better than anything else we have." At that moment, Lieutenant Heywan entered the bridge. She had been a civilian asteroid miner until 3 weeks ago, when every available pilot was pressed into military service. Her ship, the Rockhopper, was now armed with nuclear mining charges and officially designated as a combat vessel. "Admiral," she said with a quick salute, "my squadron is ready. We've loaded every nuclear device we could find onto our ships." "Nuclear mining charges aren't exactly military weapons," Captain Donghyun pointed out. Heywan grinned. "No, sir, but they make really big explosions. And according to Dr. Ji-Hai's theory, that might be exactly what we need." The first phase of the battle began when the Varian fleet moved into attack position. Their ships advanced in a steady line, energy weapons charging with an ominous blue glow. They had done this so many times before that it was almost routine. War Marshal Krekstar expected the humans to flee or surrender when faced with the sight of his full fleet. Instead, the human ships accelerated toward them at maximum speed. "Sir," Veloth said with surprise in his voice, "they're attacking us." "Impossible. Their primitive weapons can't penetrate our shields. Nevertheless, they're coming straight at us." Krekstar watched the human fleet approach with growing confusion. No species had ever charged directly at the 15th Conquest Fleet. It was suicide. "Open fire," he commanded. "And this quickly." The space around Earth lit up with energy beams as the Varian ships opened fire. The first wave of human vessels was caught in the bombardment. 12 ships were destroyed instantly, their hulls torn apart by alien weapons that cut through metal like water. But the human fleet didn't retreat. If anything, they accelerated faster. Lieutenant Heywan gripped the controls of her mining ship as energy beams flashed past her cockpit. The Rockhopper had never been designed for combat, but it was fast and maneuverable. She dodged between the larger human warships, using them as cover, while she approached the alien line. "All mining ships, this is Heywan," she broadcast to her makeshift squadron. "Remember, we need to get close enough for the charges to penetrate their shields. Don't worry about coming back. Just make sure you take one of them with you." The response came from 23 voices, all former miners who had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. "Copy that, Heywan. See you on the other side." The first human ship to reach the Varian line was the military cruiser Seoul. Captain Binwoo had loaded every nuclear torpedo his ship could carry. As Varian energy beams tore through his hull, he launched everything he had at the nearest enemy vessel. The nuclear torpedoes struck the Varian ship's shields and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship's lights began to flicker. "What's happening?" Krekstar demanded as reports flooded in from across his fleet. "Sir, the human nuclear weapons are causing system failures throughout the fleet," Veloth reported with panic in his voice. "The bio-neural networks are experiencing cascade errors." On the human side, Dr. Ji-Hai watched the battle through the sensor displays and felt a surge of hope. Her theory was correct. The nuclear radiation was disrupting the alien computer systems. "All ships," Admiral Taman broadcast, "concentrate nuclear weapons on any target showing shield fluctuations. We can hurt them." The battle became a desperate race. The human ships were being destroyed one by one, but each nuclear explosion caused more damage to the Varian fleet's interconnected systems. Ships that had dominated space for centuries found themselves blind and helpless as their bio-neural computers crashed. Lieutenant Heywan managed to ram her mining ship directly into a Varian cruiser. The nuclear mining charges she carried exploded in a massive fireball that consumed both ships. The explosion was so close to the Varian flagship that Krextar's own screens went dark for several minutes. When the systems came back online, he stared in horror at the tactical display. 37 of his ships were completely destroyed. Another 112 were heavily damaged. Their bio-neural systems burned out by radiation feedback. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They're primitives. How are they doing this?" The human fleet was in ruins. Of the original 3,000 ships, fewer than 400 remained. But they had accomplished something no other species had ever done. They had hurt the Empire. Admiral Taemin's flagship, the Busan, was one of the few military vessels still fighting. His ship was badly damaged, and he knew they only had minutes before the aliens regrouped and finished them. "Sir," Captain Dong-hyun said quietly, "we've lost too many ships. We need to retreat." Taemin looked at the tactical display. The young captain was right. They couldn't win this battle, but maybe they could still accomplish something important. "Send a message to Earth Defense Command," he ordered. "Tell them our nuclear weapons work against their bio-neural systems. And tell them this isn't over." He turned to face his bridge crew one last time. "It's been an honor serving with all of you." The Busan accelerated toward the Varian flagship, its remaining nuclear torpedoes armed and ready. Krextar watched the crippled human ship approach and felt something he had never experienced before in battle: fear. The explosion when Taemin's ship impacted the void render could be seen from Earth's surface as a new star in the night sky. The radiation from the blast completely destroyed the bio-neural core of the Varian flagship, leaving Krextar and his surviving crew floating helplessly in space. As rescue ships arrived to evacuate the damaged Varian fleet, War Marshal Krextar stared at the debris field that had once been thousands of ships. For the first time in the Empire's history, a conquest had failed, and somehow he knew this was only the beginning. The asteroid belt had never been so crowded with warships. Admiral Sujin floated in the command center of the mining station New Seoul, now serving as humanity's mobile headquarters. Around her, the surviving ships of Earth's fleet huddled among the rocky debris like wounded animals seeking shelter. She had never expected to be in command. When Admiral Taemin died ramming the Varian flagship, the responsibility had fallen to her. At 43, she was the youngest fleet admiral in human history. She was also commanding the smallest fleet any admiral had ever led. "Status report," she said to Captain Yan-ho, her chief of staff. 47 military vessels still operational, Admiral. About 200 civilian ships that can still fly. We've lost over 90% of our fleet. Sujin nodded grimly. The numbers were worse than she had feared, but they were still alive. And they had learned something important. They could hurt the aliens. Dr. Wanho drifted into the command center, his magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor. The physicist looked exhausted but excited. He had been working nonstop since the battle, analyzing captured Varian technology from the debris field. "Admiral, I have something you need to see," he said, pulling out a small device that glowed with alien symbols. "What is it?" "A piece of their bio-neural computer core. I've been studying how our nuclear weapons affected it." He activated a small holographic display that showed the device's internal structure. "Look at this." The hologram revealed a complex network of organic pathways intertwined with crystalline circuits. In several places, the pathways were burned and blackened. "The nuclear radiation doesn't just disrupt their systems," Wanho explained. "It literally burns out the biological components. And here's the interesting part. Once one section is damaged, the failure spreads through their entire network. Like a virus?" "Exactly. Their ships are all connected through quantum communication links. When we hit one ship with nuclear weapons, the radiation feedback travels to every other ship in their fleet." Sujin felt a spark of hope for the first time since the battle. "You're saying we can use this against them?" "I'm saying we can do much more than that." Wanho's eyes gleamed with possibility. "If we can get a strong enough nuclear source close to their main fleet, we could shut down their entire armada." Before Sujin could respond, Lieutenant Na Young burst into the command center. The young engineer had been monitoring long-range communications, trying to track Varian fleet movements. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Na Young said, her voice tight with urgency. "I've been listening to their military channels. They're calling for reinforcements. How many ships? 3 full battle fleets. Over 2,000 vessels. And they're not just coming to finish us off." Na Young's face was pale. They're coming to make an example of Earth. Complete planetary bombardment. They want to show the galaxy what happens when a species resists the Empire. The command center fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity had surprised the Varians once, but it wouldn't happen again. The Empire would come prepared for nuclear weapons this time. How long do we have? Sujin asked. 6 weeks, maybe 7. Sujin closed her eyes and thought about Earth. Her daughter lived there, along with 8 billion other humans who had no idea their world was about to become a battlefield. When she opened her eyes, her face was hard with determination. Dr. Wanho, I need you to weaponize every nuclear device we can get our hands on. Reactors, power plants, mining charges, even old warheads from the museums, everything. Admiral, stripping the nuclear reactors from our ships will leave us without power. Then we'll use battery backup. We won't need the ships much longer anyway. Captain Yan Ho looked confused. What's the plan, Admiral? Sujin turned to the tactical display that showed the local star system. We're not going to wait for them to come to us. We're going to take the fight to them, sir. Our remaining ships can't possibly defeat 3 full battle fleets. No, they can't. But they don't have to. She pointed to a section of the display showing nearby star systems. Captain Hyunwoo returned from Deep Space Patrol yesterday. He brought back intelligence on Varian fleet positions. Captain Hyunwoo had been on long-range reconnaissance when the battle began. His ship, the Daegu, had spent weeks mapping Varian positions throughout local space. The information he gathered was both terrifying and useful. Show them what you found, Sujin ordered. Hyunwoo activated his datapad, and the tactical display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of nearby star systems. Red dots marked Varian fleet positions, and there were a lot of them. The Empire has been building up forces for months, Hyunwoo explained. They have fleets positioned in 12 systems within 50 light-years of Earth. But most of them are spread out, guarding conquered worlds or patrolling trade routes. And their main fleet? Here. He highlighted a system 3 jumps away from Earth, the Rigel system. It's their regional headquarters. Over 5,000 ships, including their command vessels. Nayoung whistled softly. That's more ships than we've ever built. It's also where they make all their strategic decisions, Hyunwoo continued. If we could damage their command structure, we could buy Earth time to prepare proper defenses, Sujin finished. Or better yet, convince them that conquering humanity isn't worth the cost. Dr. Wanho was already working on his datapad, running calculations. Admiral, if we could get a large enough nuclear device close to their main fleet, the bio-neural feedback could potentially disable thousands of ships at once. How large? Bigger than anything we have. We'd need to combine multiple reactor cores and probably strip the nuclear fuel from every ship in our fleet. Do it. Sir? Captain Yanho protested. That would leave us completely defenseless. If the plan fails, we're dead anyway, Sujin replied bluntly. At least this way we go down fighting. The next 2 weeks saw frantic activity throughout the asteroid belt. Human engineers worked around the clock to strip nuclear reactors from damaged ships and combine them into a single massive device. The process was dangerous. One mistake could trigger an explosion that would vaporize half the asteroid belt. Lieutenant Yan Wu, a brilliant young physicist who had graduated from Seoul University just 6 months earlier, led the technical team. She had never worked with military-grade nuclear devices before, but she learned quickly. The radiation signature will be enormous, she explained to Sujin during one of their daily briefings. When this thing goes off, it'll be visible from 3 star systems away. Will it work? According to Dr. Wanho's calculations, yes. The bio-neural feedback should cascade through their entire fleet network. But we'll need to get it within a few thousand kilometers of their command ships. How do we do that? Nayoung had been quietly working on that problem. I have an idea, she said. It's crazy, but it might work. She brought up schematics of a large cargo hauler called the Incheon. The ship had been badly damaged in the battle but was still spaceworthy. We load the device onto this ship and disguise it as a civilian refugee vessel. The Varians always scan fleeing ships for weapons, but they might not look too closely at what appears to be a simple cargo hauler. And how do we get close enough to their fleet? We surrender. The room fell silent. Finally, Hyunwoo spoke up. That's not crazy. That's insane. Think about it, Nayoung continued. The Empire expects conquered species to surrender eventually. If a single ship approaches their main fleet broadcasting surrender messages, They'll bring it in for processing. Standard procedure. And then we detonate the device while we're surrounded by their ships, Sujin said slowly. Exactly. Dr. Wanho ran the numbers on his datapad. It could work. The explosion would be large enough to disable their entire command fleet. But whoever pilots that ship won't be coming back, Sujin finished. I know. She looked around the command center at the faces of her officers. These people had already sacrificed everything for Earth. Their homes, their families, their futures. And now she was asking for one more sacrifice. I'll pilot the ship, she said quietly. Admiral, no, Captain Yanho protested. The fleet needs you. The fleet needs someone to lead them home. That's your job now, Captain. She turned to Wanho. How long until the device is ready? 3 days. And how long until the Varian reinforcements arrive at Earth? 5 weeks, Sujin nodded. Then we have 2 weeks to carry out the mission and get our surviving ships back to Earth. She looked at each of her officers in turn. Prepare the Incheon. We're going to send the Empire a message they'll never forget. Outside the station's windows, the stars shone peacefully in the void. Soon one of those stars would burn brighter than all the others, if only for a moment. And in that moment, humanity would prove that even the smallest flame could light up the darkness. The cargo ship Incheon drifted through space toward the Rigel system, its hull scarred and patched from the battle at Earth. To any observer, it looked like exactly what it was pretending to be. A refugee vessel carrying survivors fleeing from a conquered world. Admiral Sujin sat in the pilot's chair, her hands steady on the controls despite knowing she was flying toward her death. Behind her, the massive nuclear device built by Dr. Wanho and his team hummed quietly in the cargo bay. The radiation shielding was minimal. They needed the device to be as powerful as possible, even if it meant the crew would be exposed to lethal doses of radiation long before they reached their target. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Varian fleet, reported Lieutenant Minho, the only other crew member who had volunteered for the suicide mission. He was barely 25 years old, fresh out of the academy, but he had insisted on coming along. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, showing a Varian officer with the typical reptilian features and cold yellow eyes. His scales were marked with command insignia that Sujin didn't recognize. Human vessel, you are approaching restricted Imperial space, the alien said in heavily accented English. State your purpose. Sujin had practiced this moment dozens of times. This is Captain Lee of the civilian ship Incheon. We're carrying refugees from the Earth system. We want to surrender to the Empire. The Varian officer's expression didn't change. How many humans are aboard your vessel? 37 survivors. We have wounded among us. Please, we just want this war to end. There was a long pause as the alien consulted with someone off-screen. Finally, he returned his attention to Sujin. You will follow the escort ships to Processing Station Gamma. Any deviation from the designated course will result in your immediate destruction. The transmission ended. Within minutes, 2 Varian patrol boats appeared alongside the Incheon, their sleek hulls gleaming under the light of the local star. Sujin followed their lead, trying to look like a defeated refugee captain rather than an admiral on a desperate mission. The Rigel system was unlike anything Sujin had ever seen. Hundreds of Varian ships filled the space around the system's primary planet, their dark hulls forming geometric patterns that spoke of military precision. At the center of the formation sat the largest ship Sujin had ever encountered, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even Earth's biggest space stations. My God, Minho whispered. How many ships are there? Sujin checked her sensors. Over 5,000. Maybe 6,000. She had known the numbers from Hyunwoo's intelligence reports, but seeing the actual fleet was overwhelming. Are we really going to destroy all of that with one bomb? If Dr. Wanho's calculations are correct, yes. The bioneural cascade should spread through their entire network. Processing Station Gamma turned out to be a converted asteroid, its surface covered with docking bays and sensor arrays. The Incheon was guided to a small bay near the station's equator, where Varian troops waited to take the refugees into custody. As her ship settled onto the docking platform, Sujin activated the final sequence that Dr. Wanho had programmed into the nuclear device. She now had exactly 1 hour before the weapon would detonate automatically. If everything went according to plan, the processing station would transfer them to the main fleet for interrogation long before the timer ran out. The airlock hissed open, and Varian soldiers entered the ship. They were tall, intimidating creatures dressed in black armor, with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Their leader, a scarred veteran with lieutenant's markings, scanned the ship's interior with cold efficiency. "Where are the other refugees?" he demanded. Su-Jin had expected this question. "They're in the cargo bay. Many are wounded and can't move on their own." The lieutenant gestured to his soldiers who headed toward the rear of the ship. Su-Jin held her breath, knowing they would find the nuclear device hidden among fake medical supplies and emergency rations. But Dr. Wan-ho had been clever. The device was disguised as a medical reactor, the kind used to power life support systems for critically injured patients. To casual inspection, it looked exactly like what it was supposed to be. "This reactor is putting out high radiation readings," one of the soldiers reported. "Medical reactors always do that," the lieutenant replied dismissively. "These primitives use crude technology for everything." Su-Jin felt a surge of relief. The Varians' assumption that human technology was primitive was working in their favor. They saw exactly what they expected to see: a refugee ship with wounded passengers and outdated equipment. "You will come with us," the lieutenant ordered. "Your passengers will be processed separately." Su-Jin and Minho were escorted through the processing station's corridors. The walls were covered with alien writing and displays showing the locations of conquered worlds throughout the galaxy. Su-Jin tried not to think about how many billions of lives were represented on those screens. They were brought to a small chamber where another Varian officer waited. This one was different from the others. Older, with more elaborate markings on his scales and an air of authority that spoke of high rank. "I am Commander Jekval," the alien said. "I understand you wish to surrender on behalf of your species." Su-Jin nodded. "The war is over. Earth can't fight the Empire. We just want our people to survive." A wise decision. "However, your species caused significant damage to Imperial forces. This cannot go unpunished." "What do you mean?" "Examples must be made. Your homeworld will be bombarded as a lesson to other primitive species who might consider resistance." The commander's yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "But those who surrender like yourselves will be spared to serve the Empire." Su-Jin felt her anger rising but forced herself to remain calm. "How long before the bombardment begins?" "Our reinforcement fleets are already en route to your system." "In 3 weeks, Earth will burn. 3 weeks. Su-Jin checked her chronometer. "The nuclear device would detonate in 43 minutes. If everything went according to plan, this commander and his entire fleet would be dead long before their reinforcements reached Earth." "Commander," she said carefully, "my ship is carrying detailed information about Earth's defenses. Troop positions, weapon placements, shield generators. Would this information be valuable to the Empire?" The alien's interest was immediately apparent. "Very valuable." "Where is this data?" "Stored in our ship's computer core. But it's encrypted with military codes. I would need to return to the ship to unlock it." Commander Jekval considered this for a moment. "Very well, but you will be accompanied by a full security detail." 20 minutes later, Su-Jin found herself back aboard the Incheon, surrounded by armed Varian soldiers. She led them to the ship's computer center, moving as slowly as possible without arousing suspicion. "The data is here," she said, activating a terminal. "But the decryption process takes time. Perhaps your soldiers could wait outside while I work? The encryption algorithms are sensitive to electronic interference from your weapons." The security chief, a massive Varian with sergeant's stripes, looked suspicious. "You will work under direct supervision." "Of course. I just thought—" An alarm suddenly echoed through the processing station. The lights flickered and the soldiers' weapons began beeping with error codes. "What's happening?" the sergeant demanded. Su-Jin checked her chronometer. 8 minutes early but close enough. Dr. Wan-ho's nuclear device had detonated. "I don't know," she lied. "Some kind of system malfunction?" Through the ship's window, she could see the effects spreading through the Varian fleet. Ship after ship went dark as the bio-neural cascade traveled through their communication networks. The massive dreadnought at the center of the formation flickered like a dying star as its systems crashed. The processing station shuddered as its own bio-neural systems failed. Emergency lighting came on, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "Sir," one of the soldiers reported, his voice tight with panic. "I'm reading massive system failures throughout the fleet. Over 90% of our ships are showing critical errors." Commander Jekval's voice crackled over the station's failing communication system. "All units prepare for emergency evacuation. Unknown weapon has disabled our fleet. Repeat, prepare for..." The transmission cut off as the station's main power failed. Sujin smiled grimly. The plan had worked even better than they had hoped. The nuclear device hadn't just disabled the local fleet. It had apparently reached the Empire's regional command center as well. What did you do? The Varian sergeant snarled, raising his weapon toward Sujin. We sent you a message, she replied calmly. Earth is not defenseless. Before the alien could fire, the ship's emergency systems detected the approaching radiation wave from the nuclear explosion. Blast shields slammed down over the windows, and the artificial gravity failed as the Incheon's own systems began to fail. In the chaos that followed, Sujin managed to reach the ship's communication array. It was barely functional, but she could send one short message back toward human space. This is Admiral Sujin to all human forces, she broadcast. Mission successful. Varian command fleet disabled. Unknown duration of effect, but Earth has time to prepare. Tell them we kept our promise. The message was transmitted just before the communication array finally died. Sujin looked around at the darkened ship. Emperor Vexthul of the Varian Empire had ruled for over 3 centuries, but he had never experienced anything like this. The reports flooding into his throne room on the Imperial homeworld were almost impossible to believe. Say it again, he commanded, his ancient voice echoing through the massive chamber. Grand Admiral Korthmal stood before the throne, his scales pale with fear. Your Majesty, the 15th Conquest Fleet has been completely destroyed. The regional command fleet at Rigel is disabled. Total losses exceed 6,000 vessels, 6,000 ships, destroyed by primitives. Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor's claws extended, scraping against the armrests of his throne. In 800 years of galactic conquest, the Empire had never lost more than a few dozen ships to any single enemy. The humans had accomplished the impossible. How? Nuclear weapons, Your Majesty. The humans somehow weaponized nuclear radiation to cascade through our bioneural networks. Our own technology was turned against us. A new voice spoke from the shadows beside the throne. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our approach to this species. The Emperor turned toward the speaker. Advisor Yelthara was ancient even by Varian standards, her scales silver with age. She had counseled 3 generations of emperors and had never been wrong about matters of galactic importance. You suggest we negotiate with these humans? I suggest we avoid making the same mistake twice. We assumed they were primitive because their technology developed differently from ours. This assumption cost us dearly. Grand Admiral Korthmal stepped forward. Your Majesty, surely we cannot allow this insult to stand. The Empire's reputation will suffer more if we lose another fleet to these humans. Yelthara interrupted. Word of our defeat is already spreading through the galaxy. Other conquered species are beginning to ask questions. The Emperor considered this. Rebellions were rare in the Empire, but they were not unheard of. If the news of humanity's victory inspired other species to resist, summon the Galactic Council, he commanded, and send a message to Earth. We will negotiate. On Earth, the news of Admiral Sujin's successful mission had transformed everything. The planet that had seemed doomed 3 weeks earlier was now buzzing with activity, as humanity prepared for whatever came next. Dr. Wanho stood in the newly constructed orbital shipyard above Earth, watching as the first of humanity's new warships took shape. The design was revolutionary, a hybrid of human nuclear technology and captured Varian systems that promised to be more powerful than anything either species had built alone. The cascade effect worked better than we hoped, he explained to President Moon-jae, who had come to inspect the construction personally. We've managed to reverse engineer enough Varian technology to understand how their bioneural systems work. More importantly, we know how to disrupt them. And our new ships will be immune to their weapons? Not immune, but much more resistant. We're using quantum-isolated computer cores that can't be affected by bioneural cascades. And every ship carries multiple nuclear fail-safes. Captain Dong Hyun, recently promoted to admiral after his heroic actions in the first battle, joined them on the observation deck. Mr. President, we're receiving a transmission from the Varian Empire. They're requesting a diplomatic meeting. President Moon-jae smiled grimly. After they demanded our surrender, now they want to talk? It seems Admiral Sujin's message was more effective than we thought. The meeting was arranged to take place at Titan Station, a neutral location in the outer solar system. The human delegation was led by Commander So Young, now serving as Earth's first xenobiological diplomat. Her years of studying alien life had prepared her for this moment better than any military training could have. The Varian delegation arrived in a single ship, a stark contrast to the massive fleets they had sent before. Their leader was Advisor Yelthara herself, a gesture that spoke of the Empire's serious intentions. "Commander So Young," the ancient Varian said as they met in the station's conference room, "I bring greetings from Emperor Vexthal and an offer of peace. After you tried to conquer our world, after you killed thousands of our people, mistakes were made. The Empire acted on false assumptions about your species. We wish to correct these errors." So Young studied the alien diplomat carefully. She had learned to read Varian body language during her analysis of their first contact recordings. Yelthara was genuinely nervous, something that probably hadn't happened to her in centuries. "What kind of peace are you offering?" "Full recognition of humanity as a sovereign species. No further military action against your worlds and—" Yelthara paused as if the next words were difficult to say. "Membership in the Galactic Council as equals." The offer was more than So Young had dared to hope for. But she had learned to be suspicious of offers that seemed too good to be true. "In exchange for what?" "Your nuclear technology. Specifically your method for disrupting bio-neural systems." So Young almost laughed. "You want us to give you the weapon we used to defeat you?" "Not for military purposes. For defense. News of your victory has spread throughout the galaxy. Other species are beginning to develop similar weapons. The Empire needs protection against its own technology being turned against us." This was an interesting development. So Young had suspected that humanity's victory would have wider implications, but she hadn't expected the Empire to admit weakness so openly. "I'll need to consult with my government." "Of course. But Commander, I must be honest about our situation. There are factions within the Empire that would prefer to simply destroy your world rather than negotiate. The Emperor is willing to talk, but his patience is not unlimited." The negotiations continued for 3 days. During that time, more news arrived from across the galaxy. The Calarian Republic, a species that had been conquered by the Empire 50 years earlier, had declared independence. The Zephyrian colonies were in open revolt. Even some of the Empire's oldest subjects were beginning to question Varian rule. Dr. Jihi, now serving as Earth's military advisor to the peace talks, brought disturbing intelligence to the human delegation. "We're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Varian space," she reported. "They're pulling ships back from conquered worlds to deal with the rebellions. The Empire is starting to collapse." So Young realized the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. By proving that the Empire could be defeated, they had inspired a galaxy-wide revolution, but that also made them a target. "If the Empire falls completely, what happens to us?" she asked Jihi. "Unknown. Some of the rebelling species might be grateful for what we started. Others might see us as a threat to their own expansion plans." When the formal treaty was signed a week later, it was unlike any document in galactic history. The Empire granted humanity full membership in the Galactic Council and recognized Earth's sovereignty over local space. In exchange, humanity would share defensive nuclear technology with all Council species, not just the Empire. More importantly, the treaty established the principle that technological advancement could take many forms. Species would no longer be judged as primitive simply because they developed differently. President Moonjae stood before the Galactic Council 6 months later, in a chamber that had once been used only by the Empire's subjects. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the vast hall, many of them recently freed from Varian rule. "Humanity comes to this council not as conquerors, but as partners," he said. His words translated into dozens of alien languages. "We have learned that diversity of thought and technology makes us all stronger. No single species has all the answers." In the months that followed, Earth became the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. Human nuclear technology was adapted for peaceful purposes across the galaxy, powering terraforming projects, mining operations, and deep space exploration. In return, alien technologies transformed life on Earth. Dr. Wanho established the first Interspecies Technology Institute on Luna, where scientists from dozens of worlds worked together to solve problems that no single species could tackle alone. His breakthrough fusion bioneural hybrid reactors provided clean energy for both human and alien worlds. Admiral Dong Hyun commanded the new multi-species defense fleet, a volunteer force that protected smaller worlds from the remnants of the old empire and other threats. The fleet's ships were marvels of hybrid technology, combining the best innovations from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Haywan, one of the few survivors of the first battle, became the first human to command an alien crew when she was given charge of a Calarian exploration vessel. Her mining background proved invaluable as the galaxy opened up new frontiers, and on a small farming world near the edge of human space, a monument was erected to Admiral Su-Jin and all the humans who had died in the war. The inscription, written in both human and variant script, read simply, "They refused to surrender. Commander So-Young, now Earth's permanent representative to the Galactic Council, often visited that monument when she needed to remember why the peace they had built was worth preserving. The galaxy was far from perfect. There were still conflicts, still species that preferred conquest to cooperation, still those who believed might made right. But humanity had proven that even the smallest species could change the course of history.